All right, well, thanks to Jim and Catherine for just sharing that information. It's really great to be part of a company that practices transparent communication. Our next segment is a message from one of our home office team members, Holly Tucker. Yeah. So Holly works on the branding team, and you may notice about Holly her energy and her enthusiasm. But don't let that be the only thing you see. Don't let that fool you, because there's a lot more to Holly than that. She's an incredibly hard worker. She's very skilled at what she does. Single-handedly, Holly manages our online reputation. And since Holly's joined the team, our Google review has gone up over 4.0, which is a massive achievement in the world of online reputation. So for this reason and a lot more, can't wait to hear what Holly has to share with us. Please welcome Holly to the stage.
There we go. Hello, beautiful people. So there's one question I've been asked 1,000 times since I started at N2. How much coffee do you drink? And they're usually a little disappointed to find out I don't drink any coffee. I don't drink any soda, tea. I don't chug pre-workout. Xander, where are you? And so then they invariably ask, okay, well, you must get 10 plus hours of sleep every night, right? You have so much energy. You can ask my roommate, she's here. I am terrible at sleeping. I get maybe 6 hours. So where does my energy come from? That is what I'm going to talk to you about today. And to do that, we need to go back in time to December, fall 2017. This was my final semester at UNCW before going to study abroad in Japan. And I would say it was when I was the highest energy I've ever felt in life. Let me tell you what I was doing. I was finishing my bachelor's degree, 14 credit hours. This include a capstone course, which is grueling any recent graduates into digital, looking at you. I was also taking 2 writing intensives, which I somehow managed to push off until the very last minute. I was also working 10 hours a week, tutoring Japanese at the University Writing Center. I was also working 25 plus hours a week at Panera Bread. Under all that, I was also applying to school in Japan, figuring out how to apply for a visa, get a passport, and apply to scholarships because I knew it'd all be pointless if I couldn't afford to go. And I like to think I had a pretty decent social life as well. One thing I don't remember was ever being tired. Now, a little interlude before we go to January 2018. If you don't know me, I love Japan. You know this. If you go by my desk, you'll see a lot of posters from Japan. If you look on Slack, those strange characters, it's katakana, one of the alphabets for Japanese. I've loved Japan since I was a child. It started with my dad, who went there for work, would bring home stories, souvenirs, and I've been in love since I was 8. 14 years I dreamed of going to this country. It was a dream of a lifetime. So now it's January 2018. And it's 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm going on a plane from Greensboro to Chicago, then a 13-hour flight from Chicago to Tokyo. Another plane ride from Tokyo to Nagoya, then a bus and a taxi ride to my dorm. And at that point, I should be pretty tired. I should be at the bottom of the barrel, but I was still bouncing off the walls with excitement. I was given a tour of the dorm and meeting all these really awesome people. And then I was alone in my room, and the door closed. Do you know what happened next? I crashed, harder than I have ever crashed before. I barely left my room for that entire week. I didn't talk to anyone, and anyone that I wanted to talk to was suddenly 8,000 miles away with over a 13-hour time difference. Now, I was barely eating, so I lost 9 pounds in that first week. And something that even to this day I don't like talking about, but I'm going to share. I'd been dreaming of going to this country since I was 8, 14 years, and I was there, finally. And all I wanted to do was go home. And even worse than that was the realization that no matter how much I wanted to go home, I knew I couldn't physically make it on that plane ride back. After a week, I was over it. I had just been at the highest energy I've ever felt in life, and suddenly I was at the lowest. So I thought about it. What was it that made me successful that previous semester? That's what I'm going to share today. The first is goals. Before I left to go to Japan, I had a lot of goals I was working towards. I was completing my bachelor's degree. I was completing an international tutoring certificate. I was going to Japan. I had so much to work for. And then suddenly I was in Japan, and it was like, what's next? It's just like Jim said the other week with the arrival fallacy. You've made it, you've arrived, but to what, to where? So I made new goals, new direction. First, the Japanese I had versus the Japanese I know I needed, there was a big gap. So one of my goals was to study as hard as possible. And another goal was based on the big, scary question mark at the end of those 5 months. I would have graduated, but I didn't have a job. So my other goal was to work hard and have a job before that plane touched the ground in the US. And with a lot of hard work and Katie, I'm here today. Now, goals are great, but you need a little more than that. The next is routine. Before I went to Japan, I was a full-time student, and I was working 2 jobs. I knew where I needed to be at every second of the day. And suddenly, I was in Japan, and I had 3 to 5 hours a day where, yes, I needed to be somewhere, but after that, I was just floating. And when you're like that, you may have heard of it before. It's called decision fatigue. You're asking all these little questions in your head. You're asking, what am I going to eat later? What am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to wear? What about the day after tomorrow? And it will wear you down when you're spending energy asking these insignificant questions. So form a routine, and that's what I did. A little boring, but I would wake up and study, eat breakfast, go to class, go to the gym. On Tuesdays, I'd go to the grocery store. And then, yes, I said boring, I would go home and I would study, and I would do homework because my goal was to learn a lot of Japanese. I'd have dinner with friends, and on the weekends, I'd explore Japan. Now, you may be looking at me and saying, okay, but does Holly really get all of her energy from goals and routines? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. There's one more point, and it's almost laughable. Make time for activities that bring you joy and fulfillment. When I got to Japan, I was stuck in a negative thought loop. It was draining mentally, emotionally, physically. I knew what brought me energy. It was being around people, which is why I get so energetic around these home office team meetings. And I could hear those people under my door having fun and laughing, and I wanted to join them, but I felt like I didn't even have the energy to get out of bed. That's something important to keep in mind, is the activities that bring you excitement and joy and energy are not always going to be the ones that take the least amount of effort. I could have laid in my bed for the rest of the 5 months and watched Netflix, but I would never have gotten my energy back. So I opened the door. I invited someone to lunch. I made friends, and I got to travel Japan and meet the most incredible people that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. And I got my energy back. After that, I was hardly spending time in my room. You now know I sleep terribly. Instead, I was in the common room studying, and even if someone wasn't in there, people would come by and bring waves of energy. Activities that bring fulfillment will look different for everyone. It might be snuggling your cat. It might be going to a concert, going for a run. It might be hanging out with your kid. There are always going to be periods of time in your life where you're more drained than others. You may be going through a financial loss. You may be moving. You just had kids. Every point of my life where I've had high energy, I've had these 3 things: goals, routines, and activities, making time for activities that bring me energy. Look at your lives when you were high energy. Did you have these 3 things? And do you have these 3 things today? The energy I have is not the energy you'll find at the bottom of a cup of coffee or the end of your power bar. But I've hopefully demonstrated you don't need pre-workout in order to feel energized. As long as you're mindful, you'll uncover way more energy than you know. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Holly. That was an awesome message.